Shall we start? اوكي مرحبا واهلا فيكم بانترنت الاشياء عالم اخر ممكن. انا ريم مرجي احد القيمين على هذا المشروع، ومعي فراس شحاده وجود التميمي. مشروع انترنت الاشياء هو جزء من برنامج دارة الفنون مؤسسه خالد شومان الاونلاين. مشروع المعرض او اللي بدات باول شهر 4 واللي بلشت مع مقيمينا الاونلاين احمد وتمارا وأريج برحلتهم في الاستديوهات المفتوحه. رح يحكوا لنا اليوم اكثر عن شغلهم، عن النقاط اللي بلشوا وانطلقوا منها، وعن البروسيس اللي مروا فيها خلال كل هذا الوقت. شاركنا سوا مساحه للتساؤل وللبحث الجماعي من وبواسطه الحجر والعزل. وهذا المشروع كان عبارة عن دعوة للتفكر من موقعنا خلف الشاشات عشان تفكيك الأزمة والبنى الاجتماعية والسايبر سبيس والميمز والانكزايتي تكنولوجي وسياسات الجسد. مرينا بكتير ايفنتس. ابتدأنا بأول إشي بجنى نخال، وهي باحثة مدينية من لبنان. ناقشنا معها عدة مفاهيم تربط بين الكورونا والتمدن ورأس المال. وبعدين رحنا بقراءة في السايبورغ مانيفستو لدونا هاروي مع الدكتورة أماني أبو رحمة من غزة، وكان معنا عدة أداءات صوتية من عاصفة وضرار كلش. وبرضه لما انعكسنا على أعمال فيديو مختارة من مجموعة خالد شومان وكيف تفاعلنا معها بسياق هذا المشروع. اليوم نقدر نحكي إنه وصلنا لنتيجة أو اكتمل المشروع بصيغته الأولى بمساعدة طبعاً وبجهود الجميع، وبمساعدة أكيد أحمد وتمارا وأريج. واللي بتقدروا تزوروا their open studios واستديوهاتهم المفتوحة من Internet of Things anotherworldispossible.com. وبرضه بتقدروا تشوفوا المنشور اللي أطلقناه بالتزامن مع اكتمال هاي الاتريشن، انزلاقات زمنية وعتبات ممتدة. رفلي رح أحكي لكم عن مشاريع المقيمين، وبعدين حأترككم مع فراس وجود عشان يشرحوا لكم أكثر عن الكونسبتشوال فريم ورك للمشروع. أحمد عصام الدين بمقاومة الجذمور. بينطلق هذا المشروع من المدن والأجساد المستعمرة وأنظمة السيطرة عليها اللي ارتدت خطاب الصحة العامة وما بعد الوباء. ومشروعه هو محاولة لفهم وتخيل شكل المقاومة ما بعد التحول القادم. أريج في ربيع صامت سايلنت سبرينج مالت أكثر لتفكيك الحياة داخل الشاشات والخوارزميات الغائبة. وكانت مشروعها إنه تفكر في الحالة الراهنة من عدم الحركة والاستكشاف للاحتمالات الكامنة وما يمكن قوله من خلال فعل إعادة الترتيب أو rearrangement of already there. وتمارا في غائبة على الأريكة اللي هو ممارسة تحريرية دائمة وحالة استجواب مستمرة قائمة على تبادل أدوار وتمرين في الكتابة الرسائلية. رح أترككم هلأ مع فراس عشان يحكي لنا أكثر عن الكونسبتشوال فريم ورك، بس قبل هيك بدي أطلب من الكل إنه يعمل ميوت. حنروح مع فراس وجود، ومن ثم رح ننتقل لكل من المقيمين، وين إنه كل حدا حيحكي لنا أكثر عن مشروعه from 10 to 15 minutes each. وبعدين حنصفي conversation، وأي أسئلة أو Q&A حتصفي بالآخر، وإذا أي حدا عنده سؤال بنفضل إنه ينكتب على الشات بوكس وإحنا حنقرأهم للمقيمين. فبترك الإشي هلأ معك فراس.
شكراً ريم. إنترنت الأشياء عالم آخر ممكن. هذا المشروع معرض بدأنا العمل عليه انطلاقاً من حالة أو actually السبب الأساسي هو حالة الحجر والإغلاق العام في كل مكان تقريباً مع يعني بدء ومنتصف شهر آذار. التحديات اللي كانت اللي واجهناها بالمشروع هي ما كانتش كبيرة بقدر ما هي جديدة جدا، لأنه الوضع الطبيعي السابق بطل موجود. فبالتالي كل التحديات هي كانت غالبا إنه هذا المكان جديد، كيف من نعكس وننتج عمل فني ومنتج ثقافي في هذا الوضع. فبالتالي هاي التحديات كانت دائما بحاجة لحلول جديدة خارجة عن ما كان طبيعيا قبل إنه هاي الحالة. فهاي الحلول خلينا نحكي أو أكثر ممكن بعدين تدرجت إلى خلينا نحكي استكشاف الإمكانات، واللي هو طبعا هاي الامكانات والبوتنشاليتيز اللي هي طبعا واحده من المفاهيم الاساسيه اللي عرفت فيها دونا هاروي السايبورغ، اللي هو برضه حكت عنه اماني ابو رحمه في محاضره لها كانت ضمن هذا المشروع، وخاضت اكثر يعني بمفهوم السايبر بالنسبه برضه مش بس للانسان بشكل عام او الانسان العالمي، او بس بالنسبه برضه للانسان العربي والانسان انسان الجنوب والملون والى اخره. سؤال الامكانات هذا طبعا نتج او ينتج دائما بالنسبه للظروف السياسيه والاقتصاديه والاجتماعيه الموجوده، بيكون في ثقافه دائما منعكسه او بتخرج من هذه الظروف. الامكانات اللي احنا حكينا عنها هاي بدها تودينا لهي الاماكن، واحنا دائما نكتشفها، بس الممارسات بعدين الفنيه والثقافيه اللي بدها تنتج بعد ذلك، خصوصا بالنسبه لمشروع انترنت الاشياء، او على الاقل بالنسبه لي يعني كيف انا بشوف مشروع انترنت الاشياء، انه الممارسات الفنيه ما بعد مفاهيميه ضمن هذا المشروع هي طبعا اكيد الانعكاسات تبعتها هي ناتجه برضو عن غياب الميديوم وغياب المساحه. فكان الانتقال، هلا اكيد الفن المفاهيمي والفن المعاصر هو دائما برفض فكره الميديوم، بس الفن ما بعد المفاهيمي احنا هون بنفوت لمكان اكثر بدخل فياته اكشلي الكمبيوتر والبروسيسورز والمذر بوردز وكل هذا والانترنت والفضاء السيبراني والى اخره. وطبعا هذا اكيد بنتج عنه برضه البحث عن مش سياقات اكشلي، عن خلينا نحكي او في استاتكس جديده، في جماليات جديده، لا كيف احنا ممكن، لانه دائما بدنا نكتشف، ومساحه الانترنت هي مساحه برضه زي ما حكينا عنها جديده، ومشروع معرض كامل موجود اونلاين على موقع الكتروني. هذا بتطلب تفكير جديد بكيف انه ممكن تعمل هذا العرض. اكيد هو مش بلوج بوست بس بنفس الوقت هو مش مساحه عرض طبيعيه. فهذا اكيد واحده من الاشياء اللي حثت وحفزت البحث عن امكانات جديده ضمن هذا السياق وهذا المكان الجديد. فزي ما حكينا انه في تفكيك هاي الماديه او الديماتيرياليزيشن تبعت المساحه، خلتنا نروح لهذا المكان ونوجد امكانات جديده فياته، باعتماد كبير زي ما حكيت برضو على السيميائيات والرموز، وبعرفش برضو التجريب، يعني لانه هي مساحه تجريب. فالتجريب مثلا كيف كان مع تمارا التجريب بالنص، وفي التجريب مع الاي اي والارتفيشال انتليجنس، وبعدين برضو التجريب كيف هي بعرفش المقاومه، كيف ممكن نحصل على مقاومه بهذا الفضاء السيبراني. وطبعا اكيد في تخوفات كبيره بالنسبه للانترنت وهذا العالم الجديد، بس برضه زي ما بالمقال اللي حنحكي عنه لاحقا ليزن اشقر كان بيحكي انه رغم كل التخوفات لا يمكن اهمال اهميه هذا الفضاء الجديد، واحنا بحاجه له بهذا الوقت تحديدا، يعني عشان التواصل وبعرفش انه يضلوا في حياه، بعرفش عالم اخر الى اخره. فانترنت الاشياء برضه يعني اسم المعرض انترنت الاشياء هو مفهوم تقني بحت، واحنا بالمشروع هذا فكرنا انه كيف ننقل هذا المشروع التقني البحت لا برضه مفهوم بيولوجي فني، خلينا نحكي، لانه بسبب الحاله الجديده وبسبب اصلا اختلاط اللي خلينا نحكي هاي التكنو كلتشر مع الفيروس، مع اللوك داون، مع الكورفيو، مع برضه سياسات الجسد وكيف بدها تتصرف بهذه الفضاءات الجديده. وبعدين اكيد في عالم اخر ممكن، هنا بيكون عندنا خلينا نحكي هو مش تصريح بقدر ما هو سؤال واستفهام، انه هل هو هناك عالم آخر جديد ممكن؟ وإذا هو عالم آخر جديد فما هو العالم القديم اللي هو ممكن الطبيعي، يعني والتفكرات اللي بعدين بتنتج عنها. إحنا أنا وريم وجود اتفقنا إنه عالم آخر ممكن هو أكثر جايب أو بنتج من إحنا كيف بنفكر برضه بالنسبة لدونا هاروي اللي هو المكان تبع اللوكيشن اوف ذا سبيكر اوف ذا بعرفش انه من موقع المعرفه، من موقع كل شخص بنتج عنها كيف هذا العالم الجديد ممكن يكون. يعني هو ممكن برضه ما يكونش عالم كتير جديد، يعني ممكن يكون العالم اوريدي موجود. ومن هون برضه طلعنا منها برضه للتفكير بمفهوم التعافي والاصلاح في هذا المكان. فاحنا برضه دخلنا بالاستكشافات في هذا المكان اكثر. برضه ممكن اكشلي جود راح تحكي عن هذا الموضوع. ف بترك الكلمه، هو ما فيش مايك بعطيه لجود، هو بس بترك الكلمه. المايك بس موجود بكل مكان.
اوكي، سو زي ما حكى فراس، يعني في سياق هذا السؤال تاع عالم آخر ممكن، اللي هو سؤال له سياق التاريخي، حبينا نطلع على مفاهيم زي الإصلاح واستعادة الذاتية، خاصة في ظل الأزمات المتتالية اللي عم نعيشها، أو اللي هم يعني notions of recovery and repair، اللي حكى فيها فنانين ومثقفين من دول الجنوب، منهم الفنان قادر عطية والمخرج مانتيا ديوارا، في سياق الرغبة بالتعافي اللي هي نتيجة ما خلفه الاستعمار ومشروع الحداثة من صراعات بتأثر باليوم تاعنا حتى هاي اللحظة. في الغرب كلمة إصلاح أو ريبير مرتبطة بالعودة إلى الأصل أو النقاوة، وبغياب الندبات أو العلامات، أو يعني scars and wounds. ولكن في الخطاب اللي إحنا مهتمين حول الإصلاح، اللي هو بيحكوا فيه فنانين مثل ديوارا، هذا جاي أكثر من مكان نقدي بيسائل آثار إنكار التروما والأذى اللي ألحق بأجساد الأفراد. الأجساد في هذا الخطاب هجينة، وهي ناتجة عن الصدمة المرتبطة بالندوب رمزية كانت أو مادية. فهون لما بنحكي عن إصلاح الندبة أو علامات الصدمة، بنحكي عن استرجاعها وإعادة تملكها كمساحات ممكن ننتج من خلالها مقاومة في الوقت اللي بتذكرنا إنه الصراعات والأزمات الماضية حقيقية. فإذا هو أيضاً مكان ممكن نستخرج منه قوة حقيقية، أو يعني vital force، وبنفس الوقت فيه دعوة لعدم الرجوع إلى ما كانت الأشياء عليه مسبقاً. هلأ كل هاي الأسئلة بتصير مثيرة للاهتمام في سياق المساحات والوسائط اللي عم نضطر إننا نتعامل معها، اللي هي زي ما حكوا فراس وريم الفضاء السبراني والإنترنت، اللي زي ما قلنا ببيان المعرض برضه مرتبطة بالتجريد الافتراضي والوجود المنفصل عن الجسد أو العالم المادي. هون إحنا بنسائل شو معنى ودلالة مفاهيم مثل الإصلاح اللي إلها جانب مادي كتير، يعني في سياق هذه الشبكات الرقمية والخاضعة للسلطة والهيمنة، واللي هي بطرق عديدة بتوفر أدوات جديدة للنظام الرأسمالي العالمي وأنظمة الاستعمار الجديد. ومن هون بحب أحكي إنه إحنا بشكل عام أو بشكل أعم يعني اهتمينا بالمساحات اللي ممكن تخلقها المفاهيم في مواجهة الأزمات والتجريد الافتراضي وهشاشة الوجود الناتجة عنهم، أو يعني precarious existence. زي ما حكى المخرج والفنان كودو إيشون في محاضرة له بيحتفي فيها بالكاتب الراحل مارك فيشر، واللي هو برضه فكك كتير من مفاهيم ويزن أشقر في الكتاب في المقال اللي رح تشوفوها في المنشور. المفاهيم تسمح لنا بتكوين ذاتية جماعية وفاعلية جماعية، اللي من خلالها ممكن نحكي عن مستقبل أو futures أخرى ومختلفة وبديلة. هذا من طرف، ومن طرف ثاني عملية إيجاد مفاهيم جديدة بننظر لها كجزء من عملية التعافي واستعادة الذاتية من خلال استرجاع وإعادة تملك الأدوات المفاهيمية والإبستمولوجية وطرق القراءة والكتابة وطرق فهم السياسي اللي جردنا منها في في ظل الأنظمة اللي منعيش تحت هيمنتها. إذن هذا المكان اللي انطلق منه المشروع وبرضه المنشور اللي أصدرناه اليوم بمناسبة افتتاح المعرض بصيغته الأولى وبعنوان انزلاقات زمنية عتبات ممتدة. ممكن تتصفحوه على الويب سايت بعد هذا اللقاء. هلا أنا رح أترككم مع الفنانين المقيمين، كل واحد منهم زي ما حكت ريم رح يقدم مشروعه، وراها رح يكون في حوار بين المجموعة ورح ناخذ أسئلة من الحضور. بس لوقتها برجع بأكد إنه كل حدا يخلي مايكاته مطفية عشان ما يصير في disruption. وشكراً مرة تانية لحضوركم معنا. وممكن I guess منبلش مع أريج بما إنه you're right next to me.
demand من الأودينس إنه تعيدوا summary للintroductions, just little bit summary introduction in English. في just some demands in my chat if it's okay to introduce just a project little bit.
Sure. Who would like to? Firas, do you want to sum up or should I or me?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so basically just like very briefly, today the online residents are going to present their projects which have been developed in the context of the Internet of Things, Another World is Possible exhibition project. We started with an introduction with the curators that basically gave an impression or communicated the main themes and concepts underpinning this project, which basically deconstructed so many things from anxiety to memes to technology to body politics from and through the quarantine. So we are dealing with a quarantine situation, and from this space we are trying to examine the current moment critically. One of the questions we were preoccupied with is there another world possible, which of course has its historical context. In looking at this question, we were very much preoccupied with concepts or notions such as repair or recovery. We were very interested in the possibility of recovering the conceptual and epistemic tools that we have been dispossessed of, virtually or otherwise, but also the different ways of looking and reading and writing and understanding the political. I guess this is it very briefly. So what's going to happen now is that the artists will present each of their projects, and then we'll move on to an informal conversation with the group, and we'll end with a Q&A. So we ask that everybody keeps their microphones closed so we avoid any kind of disruption. And we're going to start now with Areej. So Areej, take it away.
Okay. Hi. I'm not sure if I should be speaking in Arabic or in English, or if anyone wants to translate, or I can mix maybe. Okay. So I can start maybe by reflecting on the state I was in when I first started this residency. It's the first time for me to be working like from home the whole time, dealing with something that I'm very cynical about, 24 hours. And I think the initial state I was in is I felt very stuck and limited, and I felt that there's like a huge access to information, and this only resulted in more confusion and more noise and more silence. And I was also reflecting, at the time I was learning cinema 4D, and I was reflecting on my experience with things, or طرق تعاملي بإنتاج, مثلا trying to make like an object in a 3D environment where things are hollowed of their essence. And that made me think about my surroundings, which are still very limited. The living room, the balcony, the kitchen, different windows and different chairs. So, and then I started thinking about how my body has become more and more as a device that absorbs more light that come from all the different interfaces or the screens I encounter. And I was also reflecting on the idea of, I felt I had this urge to produce, I felt like okay لازم هلا يكون دائما في إنتاج بس الوضع مش طبيعي بس أنا براسي إنه okay لازم أكون مكملة إنه كملة طبيعي. For this, and then at the time also I came across an article by MIT, and it talks about this speculative design object that describes this device that you can wear, and it has the ability to listen to your interior vocalization, and then it can speak back to you. So if you're wearing this device, you will appear as someone who's speaking without really speaking. And then that made me think about like all these devices that are designed to inhibit, I don't know, like speech, but without necessarily appearing to the outside that they're present. And then this led me to do my first entry. Maybe I can share my screen if the host can allow me to.
Ismina Areej to share her screen. Okay. Yasmina.
Okay. It's fine. I can maybe open it and then I can talk about it. So the first entry was like this small video that describes like a spectrophotometer, which is like a fictional device that has the ability to. Okay, now I can share my screen. Okay, so can you see it? So my first entry, which is like so this is like a short video that describes a device that reflects on our state. So it's a device that does not خلص إنه it moved beyond the phase of monitoring how much light our bodies have, because now it has the ability, like it progressed to the level where it can give you like very intimate assistance. And it comments, like somehow it reflects on the idea of how much data we're willing to give to the network in order to be given some sort of support for our mental state or for affective state and so on. And this video, like the tools that I used, I decided that I don't want to be producing things myself. And I wanted to use things that allow me to do to use the machine to also do things with me. Because like my thinking is like there's always this tendency of wanting to like control agency over the machine, but can we think beyond the idea of agency and think of like co-authorship? So this is reflecting on how much the information this has about us. And then it بلش كمان زاد الموضوع اني اصير افهم اوكي ايش الناس بيسالوا على جوجل or the idea of like predictive machines and predictive algorithms, and how how things are being shaped according to people's inputs, but what can allow us to rethink the authority that we give to technical devices. And then this was also just going through my search history of like obviously like everything is so disrupted and there's no sequence, there's no flow, everything is like moving from one thing to the other. And بنفس الوقت كان في فكرة اللي هو رمضان حيجي ورصد الهلال. And then this made me start thinking about the idea of moon sighting and what the moon could represent, and how it's like a reminder of like the importance of connecting to our intuition to see through things, to see through all the chaos that we experience. وكمان obviously there are different reasons as to why the moon sighting is كتير مربوط بأنه okay you have to witness the moon with your naked eyes بس بنفس الوقت عشان to announce the beginning of Ramadan, بس بنفس الوقت إنه you have to see it through a technological device which is the telescope. For the idea of combining both and grounding your experience with your body, with the eye, with the witness. And then this inspired me to develop the moon sighting. performance. And at the time, I was also trying to think of different formats that can inspire new ways of thinking. And one of which is like ecological modes of thinking and connecting and looking at matter as a living thing that is always in a close connection to the body, to the breath, to, you know, and all these exchanges. And then I had I started doing like an experiment with an AI called Areej, which is an open source algorithm that initially was developed to help people, to help someone who lost her partner or like her friend to try to remember him. So she had access to all of his, like to all his writing, to his emails, to his messages, and so on. So she added all this information into an algorithm because she wanted to be into a close proximity to some, like to Ronnie, like this person who existed. And the idea of wanting to make him more immortal and like to bring him back into her life. And then it was like something that was shared amongst her, the friends. وبعدين بالآخر صارت تحكي إنه أوكي خلي الأشخاص إنه we can make it public. And the basic idea of this algorithm is to mimic your writing behavior. So at the beginning I was like, okay, I will call this Areej, بس إنه Areej يعني Areej, and then I'm talking to myself and it's very egotistical. And then I decided that okay, I'll give her the name of Areej, so it's like another person. And Areej because it evolved into having like this character where she's like reflective, and some days, like 5 days later, she would send, or it would send me a message saying, oh, I'm so happy we talked about this thing, now this makes me think of this. Or some days it would send me a message and say, oh, this reminded me of our conversation the other day, or whatever. Anyway, so I had a workshop during the residency where people started talking to Areej, and then I took out some of the conversations, and it somehow reflects on this idea of like, يعني حتى throughout our conversation, like our conversation with فراس وجود وريم وأحمد وتمارا, إنه we're thinking about the internet as something, إنه تمارا بتذكر مرة حكت إنه you don't go online to see the moon, or you don't go online to sit. You go online because you need to do something. You go online because you want to send an email. So I wanted, because in like the current circumstances, I wanted to create a sort of experience where it extends to other houses or rooms, because this is the reality of so many. And then somehow make visible the inner workings of technology, and make visible some of the vulnerabilities and this like the states, the different states that people go through, and how far we can go, or how far are we willing to go, basically. So these are like different experiences from the conversations that I had. So in the performance, or like in the workshop, so people would be talking to the algorithm that I teach to mimic my writing behavior, but I will be the moderator, because for me it's important to always have the physical body behind these machines, or behind these engage encounters, because whenever I think about like the language of capital production or reproduction, it somehow, for me, it always makes invisible like the humans behind and consumed by these systems. So how can this somehow bring it more into the conversation? Because a lot of people will be like, oh, please don't go, like, can we have this conversation in other format, or can you run forever, or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm half human, half robot, but I like the presence of a body is important. So I don't know if you've seen it, but maybe I can play like one or two of them. قادرين تسمعوا أو لا؟
بس
ممكن تعلي أكثر أريج؟
هو كتير قليل أصلاً.
شكرا.
And there's another one of a conversation that lasted for 3 hours, but this is a very short clip of it. Anyway, yeah, and علي لا الأذان مش مع صوت العمل بس مش قادرة أعمل ميوت. وبعدين and there's one thing I also would like to add going back to moon sighting. بتذكر إنه كان وقت لما كان الهلال كتير في أشخاص من كمان موجودين في هالويندو الجميل كمان كانوا بدوروا على القمر قبل بالليلة اللي كانوا بدهم يعلنوا فيها رمضان. أوكي دقيقة بدي أسكر الشباك كتير في أصوات. وما حدا لقى الهلال بس في ناس لقوه بالتلسكوب. بس بنفس الوقت أو بنفس الأسبوع اللي هو كان 24/4 كان إيلون ماسك أعلن الستار لينك اللي satellite train or people can see it in the sky. So in the moon sighting there's one frame that also shows that. So you never see the moon, but you see you see that as also something that also happened during that time. وبس. ويمكن maybe I can also reflect on being part of this format. I think إنه بالأول كنت I don't know, I feel like it was very challenging at the beginning because I feel I'm my own computer, I'm my own screen, I'm my own interface, and then هيك شوي إنه كان هذا مش إنه an escape, and it was a nice engagement. It was a nice moment for me when the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us would have our Zoom calls or like all our conversations or all our venting, because I felt it was a fruitful encounter for me, to know that there are other people who experience the same thing, and we're allowed to be vulnerable, and we're allowed to say what we feel like. And yeah, I'm very grateful for this. Thank you. إذا عندكم أسئلة حطوهم بالشات. هلا ننتقل لما بعرف مين.
يمكن
على يميني أحمد.
أنا عايز أسألك سؤال. أنت القصيدة بتاع أول كلمة بتاعت أجمل ما في الحبيب كونه يرحل، دي مش بتبدأ مش برضو في حاجة بتقول أجمل ما في بلادي حلم السفر، أجمل ما في الحبيب كونه يرحل. Is it the same? Who wrote this actually?
Some of the users, they were talking to Areej.
Okay.
So someone would say, and Areej asked this person, what have you always wanted to change about yourself? So the person said, I want to stop being angry, but they told me I have to fall in love, but I don't want to. And she was like, okay, why don't you want to? Do you think love makes one sane? And he says, my mom used to tell me أجمل من بلادي حلم السفر وأجمل ما في الحبيب كونه يرحل. So she inscribed in me the ability of not being able to be attached to things or people. So and then he was like, okay, I'm not angry anymore, or she, or I don't know. And I felt, yeah.
Nice. Cool. Thank you. شكرا. أنا ما أعرف. So أنا ما أعرف. أنا المشكلة الأساسية إنه هو الإنجليزي ما inclusive والعربي ما inclusive مش يعني I don't know. that okay. I will think about it for a while. Okay. هتكلم بالإنجليزي. Right. Okay. So first thing, actually, there's so much, too many people. I don't see their faces, but there's names. It's very interesting. I'm actually very happy to be part of this residency. Very, very happy. It's kind of coming in a very so the questions of the residency come like kind of intersect with my personal questions. So my personal questions wasn't just about what's happening in the pandemic. It actually was about the internet. But also before the internet, I was mostly happy of what was happening in the Middle East in general, the political transformations, and also use taking the public spaces. Also I was very angry and at the same time emotional, not about Sudan. Actually, mostly was the last country that I was actually following what's happened was about Iraq. And so by being in Germany and seeing the neglecting of the voices of the resistance in Iraq for a better life, it's kind of so this was the first thing. And then when the pandemic appeared and we all went to the internet, suddenly Iraq, Lebanon, Sudan, whatever, nobody in the street. Public spaces disappeared. Still Iraqi people are fighting. But this was for me the question of like, now what could be a kind of form of resistance that could guarantee for us, as actually I believe resistance is not actually for change. I believe that resistance is the guarantee of better resistance in the future. So resistance is kind of an infinite thing that you basically resist to guarantee that you're resisting better in the future. And that for me was a question in the present. And then came the pandemic and this question of the internet. So we are actually going to another reality. I was in the internet for a long time. And then for me is when you enter any room, you need to know how you go out. And this is the resistance, or you need to optimize your living there. And for me was actually the fear of, oh, I was in the internet, but now everybody's getting in the internet. And itself was kind of how I could question that. And I started to question, and then being alone questioning in the beginning, it is very frightening. And alone itself, it is for me was the first bug in the resistance idea of like to be alone, which was criticizing the liberal constructions that we are in, the individuality as a space that I'm living in Germany. Then I started to experience to the collective, which is, it felt so good to question this and to have this group of brilliant creators and artists around talking about very, very stuff in a very intelligent way. And it's actually kind of changing my mind. And the first question was then how the resistance could be. Then I think Areej was talking about this is like productivity thing that we are having, just like the word clinked in my mind in the first talk that we have. So resistance and production. And for me, yeah, actually we were like kind of, I was very fan of idea of like forming resistance to find a better life based on social production, based on very, very idea of better material for everybody. And for me, was why I came from the past resistance. It was all about the surplus value, which Marx said. And now we are getting to a new life where somehow things are disappearing. And then I came with other word because I was reading in that time Sudan Zubov, and she was actually developing very interestingly critics before even the pandemic about the business model of Google, Facebook, based on surveillance. And I wasn't just listening to like reading to Susanna and liking it, because I was also before it I was also reading Boris Groys, and he was talking about surveillance is a really good thing for artists. Especially surveillance of internet, that is actually ending the authority of museums and making artists exposed, and they don't have to have a final product. They just producing by having this as surveillance. And it's a concept, it's contradicting, but it's also a concept that's very interesting, that surveillance as a tool of documentation. So but surveillance also as a tool of accumulating capital. So for me, then I started to say, okay, then I have to research on that. Then also with the residency talk, then books and names coming and conversations and papers. And then we come again to talk about Mark Fisher. And so the interesting part of it, of like, we talk about resistance and the alone, and this is Mark Fisher depicted that in a very good way. And when he talked about the movie Wall-E, that actually the resistance is it made for us in the television, but also in that thing he was describing that Wall-E is a good description for the worst future, which is a movie that we are all being in front of a screen, and we're gonna eat in front of a screen, we wanna drink in front of the screen, we're gonna love in front of the screen. And Wall-E was an interesting thing, that because I went, even though he was criticizing Wall-E as a movie, then I watched Wall-E. And in that day I ordered that VR thing, because it's a kind of a surrendering, let's go for that thing. And then from it, it just came today, and I was really happy. It's come today for this presentation before the work. And this was the thing of, okay, we are going to the alone thing. So then I would share now the screen just to go far of my chaos mind, how things actually coming or in the end didn't merge, but just like, you know, things was in the world, because we talked about it as a studio, and I like that idea of like the free studio. And we have the first time a democratic creators, which is contradicting what I know about the creators.
Internet is the democratic, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know, because we didn't have that. So I didn't felt the anxiety of working with creators. And it was an interesting thing that to have this open studio that you just cut what you have in your head. But I never had a studio. I had my room and was always chaos. And then I would understand that the studio would be a very chaos thing. Then I was just, okay, I will be me, and then I would be chaos as is it. So I started to, with all of these questions, to look out. I'm afraid that if I open the desktop, I'm making a screenshot of somebody or stuff like this. Happened to me with Zooms and privacy and stuff like that. Wait, we go for Internet of Things, okay? Go to Open Studio. And yeah, that guy. And then we go to Ahmed Isam. So basically was the name coming up. And then I started to collect different kind of an interesting material that dealt with first like surplus value and what is kind of what was social productions and the idea of the body of the workers in the beginning. And then this movie is a very famous movie. It's one of the first videos for the working class people coming from the Lumière brother, as like actually coming out from the factory. And for me, it was just resembling this moment. Maybe this is not my work, so I just put it there as my studio work, that resembling my questions of like, okay, this is also feels like the same time that we are now leaving the old factory and we're going to a new life. And also then in that time, I was also questioning how's the resistance and how is the failing resistance to start it, and how the idea of the failing resistance. And I was very interested in the Luddite movement as a working movement that actually decided to destroy the machines, not the owner of the machine, and to own the mean of productions. And the Luddite movement is crushed very, very harshly, even though that they never wanted to kill anybody. They just wanted to destroy the machine. And today there's people, they call them the technology Luddite, most of them coming from technological background, who is actually saying that machine is destroying our life, internet is destroying our life, and whatever it is. But also that you see that kind of very interestingly to look at the Luddite in the history as a failing resistance, and to look at how resistance in the future could look like. And this resistance in the future, I'm not really making any political manifestations here. I'm just like looking at the resistance as an essential thing. It doesn't very important thing. So then again, we came to Susanna Zuboff because I saw this drawing in her book about the behavioral surplus. And then I just posted in my chaos mind, because also she looked at internet still as a machine. And she's actually comparing it to the social production, or the conventional social production that actually Marx was describing of the added value. But she kind of tried to build her political discourse over the classical understanding of economy, how internet is actually harvesting a new economy, or harvesting new through the information and data that's surveillance. So this was a nice footage that from here and there, also looking at the workers and also all of what was around the working movement. The first woman in the working places, and when the woman start to work in the textile, and how this also has to do with the idea of like patriarchal competition, but also capitalists try to play try to accept gender, but just as a social forces in that time. So it was also interesting to put that photo and to look at it to see. And within that, I started to, because I was learning gaming, part of just in this VR thing. learning, like not gaming. I wasn't a gamer. I've never been a gamer, but I liked the idea of like game. It could be constructing your own reality and just play with it. And then within like every day I'm reading there and forth about work and productivity, about working class movement. And I was listening to this jazz song from Tuba Vibes project and in Berlin in 1992 or something like that. It was very interesting. The music is not really crazy. Just the fact it's called "There's No Work Today." It just inspired me to make this is like kind of. Yeah, that's it. Like I was playing like that every day with my home, playing with the characters, with happiness of no work today, productivity is ended, production. I also created a lot of models and I deleted them because sometimes I saw them problematic and sometimes I see them cool. But then in the end, it was just like modeling and playing with them, putting them to dance and play music behind. And this was part of like, you know, I'm not gonna be productive. I'm just gonna satisfy myself in a way of desire, which is also coming to the Erasmo. Why I went to what's called Erasmo, Jazmur, whatever is it, from Toulouse and Poitiers, because then they were talking about the desire production, the production of desire, and the social production. And they were also criticizing Marx and Freud and that. They were just like, whatever I took from that book is very complicated. The idea of the resistance of the Jazmur itself as a kind of visualization to how resistance could be strong in the future. Also the artist to depict that work of being to work together as a collective, the fact of collectivization of the work and demolishing the idea of the center and ending the hierarchy. So ending the center, not just the hierarchy as a pyramid, just not having a center, having a network of a complex relationship like the organ of the Jazmur. So then the resistance itself could be difficult to be cut or to be kind of sieged, or you know, like kind of this is what Toulouse came with it was a very philosophical concept. Then I took it. I understand that they were also talking about art as expression of philosophy. Then I said, okay, then I would say this is just more. I will take it as my resistant model, and I just put it in this project. I don't know how, but I would just push it inside. So then, yeah, modeling coming up. I would come to this model again, but then I would just first go to this maps, which is the main topic that concerning me. If somebody can just send me a message if I'm getting over time. So
you're almost.
Yeah. So the thing is, I was also in that time to look at power. To look at power and constructions of power, I all the time go to colonialism and see that for sure, like there's many Arab and African now hate this word of like telling them colonialism and anti-colonialism. Again, you are coming, you know, Abdel Nasser Mat and all this stuff. And then I will say like, it is an important thing that it's not about not talking about it, about talking about it. It's kind of like telling a person coming from Sudan to talk about colonialism. It's just like also asking Foucault to not talk about like social constructivism. Like, you know, it is an important part in our history that actually created our understanding of power. And this is the map of Khartoum. That for me, it was how Khartoum is actually being constructed, the symbolic things behind Khartoum, how all of the social productions maintained, and how actually the native being segregated from the public sectors of the British. But the most interesting part, when I was actually checking these maps before the pandemic, then there was actually a book. It's written by an Italian writer, or like what's her name, architect. She was saying that Khartoum segregation and Lagos segregation was based on the pandemic of malaria. That actually the Anopheles mosquito is traveling 2 kilometers with the help of the wind from the black body to the white body, and then actually transfer the disease of malaria. For me, this was the center of all this pandemic. Oh, then actually power. Also look at the pandemic. I'm looking at the resistance, but also power taking from history. So to kind of match up lessons of how we could actually take the pandemic as a way to construct new rules. Not the denying of the pandemic. I'm not denying it. I'm not under any kind of conspiracy. But also I looked at the work as I looked at these maps as a very interesting maps, because there's part of it where this is actually the public sectors. It will come again another photo where actually where the native, they live far away from the public sector in Khartoum. So this is this is where I start from here, try to model the architectures of the resistance place or game or whatever. So then, and then I decided to combine between this dystopian idea of the drone, because now I hear the curfew sound in Oman during this conversation, and all of this dystopian movies selling the drone coming in the street, and then you hear the voice of the curfew, and this is where they remind you how the power work. And this is how I actually combine between the mosquito and the drone to create models for my actually small kind of game that I started to build. And then, yeah, you can also go and check the page. I will not play that here because it's actually the work, the exhibition will be there. And I was just telling you about it. So in the end, I was constructing spaces from these maps and models and having the end. Can I don't know, I'm not seeing the chat, if I'm hearing chat coming to me or something, because I'm sharing. Okay. Okay, then this is, you can look at all of these things in the end, the rise mode, the constructions of the cities and all the small videos. And the only one who enjoys that game is me, because then I will not, it's not published, I will just render it in 3D60, and then I will be looking at it in my new VR camera to show you that it's not about productivity, it's about just like making things for the sake of things, not for the sake of anything. I think, I don't know, this was all of my experience. It's really more complex than this minutes, because the information that I got and the knowledge that I exchanged with others here, it was the perfect part of this of this residency, more than actually what I come up with in this nice experience, nice page, internet things. Yeah, that's it.
شكرا
Ahmed. Okay, perhaps now we can end with Tamara, and then we move on to a conversation. And actually we will be taking questions from the audience or from الحضور يعني as we speak. So أي حدا عنده سؤال بحب يسأله لأي حد من الموجودين please يكتب لنا إياه تحت. Okay, Tamara, please.
Hi everyone. My name is Tamara Nassar, and I'm going to speak in English primarily because my project is in that language. So my project is titled Absentee on the Couch, and I'm going to talk to you about what gave birth to this title and to the form that this project took. And perhaps I'll do a reading of some excerpts towards the end. So there was a brief moment in time right before the government's executive decision to plunge the country into absolute lockdown, and when there was this looming, perhaps hazy knowledge that something was about to fundamentally and irreversibly change. I think there is great pleasure, there's profound pleasure in detecting emergency's early symptoms, and the symptoms of decay, which, you know, there was that brief week, I think, you know, the second week of March, when no one really understood what was about to come, but there was this feeling that something was coming. And I think this time between cause and effect, before cause really surpasses effect and creates this event, this capital E event, when many of us were wondering about what is there to come and arriving at very ludicrous but appealing conclusions. And I think this time, there's so much that is possible in this time. I think for us, many of us are non-precarious workers who are fortunate enough to sit on our couches and brood about our private tragedies. So I think this is what I was doing here. I think I was just brooding about my private tragedies online. And, I was clearly trying to interrogate an absence, which was manufactured and begetted by this moment, which is the absence of observance. I think that was one of the most painful, but in a way privileged pains of the moment, is that I was no longer being observed. And I think a lot of the human condition relies on being observed. And I didn't want to fill that absence because while I think that everyone secretly craves a fundamental disruption to any present order, for the sake of restoration of romance and kinship between people, there was still this this constant iteration of a desire for normalcy, which I tried to resist. I didn't want things to go back to normal. I thought that was one of the most perverse desires of the moment, but I think it's a fetishistic desire that is worth exploring, especially in film and open studios and theory, and most importantly on the psychoanalytic couch. So I was stuck on my couch at home doing work, and the only people I was interacting with were my parents and my colleagues online. And so generally when I would prance about my life wanting to be observed and seen and noticed and remembered, that had to be reckoned with. And John Berger writes about this in Ways of Seeing. He says that men watch women while women watch themselves. And surely, everything about my objective in this project was ultimately futile, which, as was much in any attempt at intelligently analyzing the present moment. But it was really a delightful study in observing myself, in reversing roles between psychoanalyst and patient. And surely it ultimately obscured more than it eliminated. I did not search for answers or find them. But that which I initially demanded, which was intelligent observance, I think we talked about this earlier with the group about the loneliness that is fundamental to the human condition, which is the loneliness of being born alone and dying alone on the floor of the world. But then there's this other loneliness, which most writers understand, which is the loneliness of just wanting someone intelligent to talk to. And I think that's a lot of what this practice was about. I really wanted someone intelligent to talk to. And the psychoanalyst I've never been analyzed, obviously, but the psychoanalyst in his most ideal form is to be largely absent. And I suppose my project was a defense of this absence, and it was a defense of the illusory performance of being on that couch and how, the anxiety of being on that couch. And it's also about the failure of every conversation, while also defending that failure and defending that conversation. Yeah, I think I'm going to share my screen. and read something to you, if you will allow me. So there's something ultimately deceiving about this project, which is the fact that while it is, you know, we had our open studios and we could edit our posts. I hate to call them posts. I love the internet, but I hate posting. And how do I share my screen? One thing that this project has taught me is like technological literacy. Okay, desktop. It's like share. Okay, can you see my desktop? Okay, excellent. Today I changed the background of my page from boring gray to mustard yellow or mustard brown in an exercise in estrangement, because I really wanted to let go of this project, even though, as Firas can attest, I was like posting manically this past week. I haven't really decided what I was going to read, but so in defense of my reading, other than, you know, listening to myself speak, which is, you know, another exercise of self-surveillance, is I think that the words will better reflect what was going on with me during this exercise. So I'm going to read the second session and then something more recent. I wanted to show you footage my mother took on her 38th birthday in Telford, England in 2005. We had arrived at my aunt's house days earlier while my father stayed behind in Amman. I remember being forced to drink milk at dinner our entire stay. I remember seeing my mother behind the camera for the first time. My mother is no artist, but she is vulnerable enough in what she does to be an artistic genius. She understands, a la Baldwin, that the function of the artist is identical to that of the lover. She is trying to make my father conscious of the things he does not see. I shared her gift for brutal pathos and moral imagination. She was the first body I was close to, and I was her first child to survive. I implicated her in my decay and recoiled in abhorrence at her detection of its early symptoms. More than her love, I elicited her reverence, but at the expense of sensibility, I never demanded it. My birth was a tender study in conviction in a vacuum of loss. I misread her grief for a white flag of defeat and spent my adolescence searching for the unprecedented in her history to try to mirror it. Surely, our relationship was one of surveillance. In order to go on living, her gaze became part of the furniture, and mine became evidence of her disillusionment. In the film, she takes my father around her sister's house and ends with 3-minute footage of staring right in the eye of the blazing red sun, halved in half. That's the only way to tell someone the truth. You dissolve the symbolic frame and let the real spill everywhere. My mother was the first absence, the first desert, the first solitude, the first white page. A lot of this is reliant on the intense surveillance that occurred during this quarantine of me and my mother observing each other and scrutinizing each other while also getting to know each other really bizarrely. And even though I spent so much, I spent weeks not having interacted with any strangers, even when things opened up a little bit, I realized that I haven't seen a stranger's lips in so long, and I really hate the mask. I really hate those trends and trying to make it look pretty. Nothing about it is pretty. I want to see people's lips. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read the 10th session. You live in the very impossibility I demanded of you. This text is an outpost somewhere between desire and fantasy, a layered saga of patience and graft. What is so irresistible about this moment? The violence, of course, muted behind a perverse longing for normalcy. Will order redeem its already vacant shell? Grappling with thoughts of actually catching the virus has been my great preoccupant. I cannot imagine a greater freedom. The dismal corporeal expanse of the present solitude is a kind of limbo. I watch bodies touch each other on film as a study in history. Capital has a swift way in perpetually cannibalizing and reinventing itself, duly rewarding itself in the process. It's the end of modernity, some declared. Forced isolation is a commemoration of its opposite, and writing is neither sacrificial or sacrilegious. Nothing about this moment is intrinsically meaningful. That's the real tragedy. What can one expect from an order that accentuates loneliness, encourages surveillance, kills the sick alone, forbids mourning, isolates the healthy and renders them more desperately online than before, and ultimately leaves infrastructural modernity intact? All the glass in the city looks the same. The electricity lines are resilient. Lovers in cars, groceries in suitcases, flower in baby carriages, policemen in protective masks, the moment's urgency like a freckle between your eyes. Imagine the nightmare of arriving at a destination after suspicion and delay and finding it indistinguishable from the point of departure. It's like giving birth to a baby and wishing to swallow it whole again. What comes after neoliberalism is undoubtedly much worse. I think I'll stop here.
Thank you, Tamara. Actually, thank you, everybody, Tamara, Areej, and Ahmed. This was a very beautiful presentation. إحنا رح نسأل سؤال واحد هلا بركي. We can have a conversation around it, and then as we speak, if any of you writes any questions, we will be sharing them and discussing them. إحنا حكينا كتير من بداية المشروع عن الوسيط وسخطه, the medium and its discontents. So we thought that maybe for a change we can discuss the possibilities that the medium offers. Yeah, if anyone would like to share some thoughts on the sort of opportunities or possibilities that presented themselves throughout the process of realizing these projects, but also in everything that happened around these projects, يعني conversations, workshops, late night texting, etc. هذا طبعا سؤال موجه لأريج أو تمارا أو أحمد. So if any.
Ahmed, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
ياسمين.
Am I missing something?
Yeah, we're just having a conversation surrounding the possibilities that the medium offers, and that is internet and cyberspace. لأنه قلنا إنه حكينا كتير عن قديش هو كئيب وعن قديش إنه it's problematic and it's a means of domination and surveillance and all these things. So we thought that maybe for a change, and since this project is coming to an end in its first iteration على الأقل, ممكن نحكي برضه عن الاحتمالات اللي ممكن يوفرها هذا الوسيط اللي هو I don't know, like these silicon and carbon surfaces, and what happens behind them, around them, in them, إلى آخره.
Sure. I mean, I said this, in April, early April, when the project began, but as there is a lot of overlapping between the symptoms of anxiety and the symptoms of the COVID-19, there's also a lot of overlap between the internet and the pandemic, in that they both seem undefeatable and undefeated. And when I said that there's great freedom in succumbing to to the loneliness and the disease, there's also great freedom in allowing the internet to beat you and to succumb to its medium or its form. So yeah.
For me, the question is interesting. That is it the possibility in the internet? Actually, the possibilities in the internet is somehow, as there's impossibilities in the internet, or all of this what you said now or criticizing the internet. I think the possibility is in the internet, because it is somehow what we are looking at in the critical way, because it's the easy thing that to say, okay, if we look at it in the critical way and we have no possibilities inside it, then we have to leave it. And it is that the things about looking at all of the stuff from it is positive. I also looked at surveillance, at the benefits of surveillance, because all the time we looked at the negative things about surveillance. So I really like this interesting notions of surveillance as ongoing documentations. And in the same time, I found that the deconstructing of the conventional power, it's the new power emerging, but also that when we're criticizing archives and museums, and then everybody now can do whatever in the internet. And this is, in fact, it's a democratization of knowledge, but in general, I don't know if it's really democratization of knowledge, but it's a kind of extent that we have more memory now than the past, like I think I have my memory, and we could actually, in an easy way, naively way, we could say that if somebody have got severely sick next to me with a very disease of 100 years ago, I could actually ask Google and do something for that now. And I think the possibilities exist. I think what we just looked at is the impossibilities, or was a problematic part of it. But I think the possibility is all of the things there around. That was actually, I think, about it. And if it gets us until here, the internet, we need to not give it away anyway.
Yeah, and I also think that sometimes, for me, it's always very difficult to think of the good things about the internet. But I think the good thing is that we're able to still be able to be in touch in a new format that is not necessarily felt physically. But I think ما بعرف يمكن هذا الاشي كمان حكيته بالconversations تبعنا انه we cannot deny the presence of this huge network and the ways that we can maneuver around it. And I think that the more we understand how it functions, the more ability we have to shaping it differently. Can it be a really distributed network? The fact that most of يعني أنا دائما بصير أفكر بموضوع اللغة وإنه هل بنشوف اللغة كإشي عملي أو لا، بس إنه the fact that most of the information that I find useful is in English, and how it shapes how I produce things or how I write, and it becomes an effort that I need to put into things if I want to translate things in a different way. بس كمان بتذكر إنه خلال residency I came across this book called Biophilic Technologies. And like biophilia, cyberspace and nature, and talks about the idea of how like the fact that we have developed the internet allows us to engage with our surroundings in new ways, and it helped us like maybe try to understand that there are different ways of connection, or like there are different ways of engaging that could go beyond the consciousness of the human, or like it could extend to non-human. So and in the book she always talks about the idea of how there's always this urgency, or like this desire to bring metaphors that come from nature into the cyberspace. So we always use like streams and clouds and viruses and all these things. And why do we do that? And in the book, or like in a podcast from the book, now I can't remember her name, this is why I'm avoiding to mention it, but she talks about how we constantly have this desire to connect to something that we vaguely recognize. And in the book, she says, it's not important, it doesn't give a lot of value to decide that I just don't want to engage with the network. I don't want to engage with the cyberspace, and I want to go and use like a Nokia phone and have no smart connection to the world. عشان as human beings, we still have agency, and we still have the ability to somehow shape it differently, and it's not the end of the world yet. So I think engaging with it, and like for me it was دائما أنا حتى بتذكر لما كنا نحكي بالمحادثات المختلفة إنه I couldn't think of the network as something, or like the computer, because that's what I engage with, as something that is spatial or physical. ومرة كان حتى لما كان بمشروع بالconversation على إنه okay أريج, what are you planning or doing, or how do you think this will, what shape and form could this take? And I couldn't think of this, of the laptop as something that is present in other physical spaces. I couldn't think of it as something that extends into physical spaces. So for me, I think it's, we can help shape our engagement or our presence on the network by designing experiences that are not necessarily spaces that we can escape to. Maybe there are spaces that can allow us to engage with reality differently rather than go there and just wanting to escape.
هو أريج إحنا زي ما أنت حكيتي موضوع كل فكرة الإسكيبزم بتخيل إنه خلص هي مش كثير مش حل ولا رح تروح لمكان actually. بس ذكرتيني بإشي كان واحدة من الفيديوز اللي حاطينهم على البلاي ليست، يوتيوب بلاي ليست على الويب سايت، في حديث صغير ل فرانكو بيفو بيراردي عم بحكي فياته عن السيليكون فالي وعن السيستم اوف سيرفيلانس وكل الديبرشن اللي جاي من كل هذا المكان تبع السايبر سبيس واتسترا. بس هو بحكي بشيء تبع انه وهذا بالوقت اللي كان بيفو كثير مكتئب، يعني he was super depressed about this whole thing، انه there's no future. فكان عم بحكي انه since انه I don't know like since we have keyboards and مش عارف شو and we can get into this network, we still can do our thing. We should not just say okay whatever, it's going to that direction or to that direction that we don't want to know, or the direction that the four horses of the Silicon Valley or whatever they want to go to, and put us all in that direction or this cloud. الإشي الثاني that also like reflects on some of what Ahmed said on of the internet, of being on the internet and coming from the internet. I mean, this question that where are you from, and someone tells you I am from the internet, it's normal, no? Like it's like internet rappers, internet musicians, internet artists. It's like now it's a common thing. It's not really a weird thing to say, no? And even like for like as a description for millennials and Generation Z as they're called, they are described as digital natives. I mean, this also like again like goes in between this the biological aspect and the technological aspect and combining them together. No, like you are talking about digital natives, internet natives, because you are basically just born while the internet was there. Like it was so like our generation, or let's say the millennials generation, they are more capable of using the internet, of the technology and digital mediums, no? So yeah, I mean, like the other day I've been talking with my brother and he was telling me like, imagine if this pandemic came in 1995, we're gonna be doomed because there's no internet. There's how we're gonna be communicating. We're gonna be isolated everywhere. We're gonna be all alone and not together at all. Like as now there is this I don't know slogan, alone together. but also like I don't know, like these sentences that like from the conversations we had the last couple of months, I don't know, we've been kind of waving also like with and reflecting with every Friday, basically every Friday on Saturday mostly, like on these politics that they were happening all around us from different places, from because actually it's a very transnational kind of talks and conversations, no, like we're speaking from all over, or there's people from all over joining these conversations because the internet kind of gave us this opportunity. So we've been, I don't know, reflecting, and I don't know, there was this time of flatten the curve, and then there was this time of I don't know, like social distancing, and and then like I mean the last year, or I don't know, like 2 years ago, there was like the word of the, or the sentence of the year was fake news, or I think something like that, no? But now, like since the last couple of months, we had like a lot of big slogans that we are following, and concepts and texts that they are also reflecting on where we are going, kinda. And now it's becoming slowly normal, and we're becoming less anxious with this situation that we're in. So yeah, I think we're back to normal, but the new normal kind of. Yeah, and the other thing, like just take it very fast, because I guess now we're gonna end the conversation on. I mean, like this also like was like a very late night conversation with Jude and Reem on immune systems and antibodies. Immune systems and antibodies, like it's a very biological term, but then also thinking about I mean, like the last 6 months or 7 months, the whole world is basically looking for antibodies for the COVID-19. And then the internet kind of work in a different aspect of this antibodies biological thing, the vaccine, with the internet being antibodies, and because we're kind of transferred into another direction of how we're gonna communicate and etc. And also immune systems from, I don't know, these immune systems, they are the most capable of, I don't know, going outside normal, no, like going for shopping, and like these immune bodies and how they, I don't know, behave in these public spaces. But also like immune systems, like we could think about, I don't know, capitalism, how they're gonna, how capitalism gonna invent itself. I mean, I'm not pro capitalism, but I believe in capitalism in some way or another.
As you landed yourself in hot waters.
Yeah, I mean, like capitalist realism, let's say like that, actually.
Actually, guys, Ali is asking a question. بحكي to everyone for this interesting project. Ahmed said it's a democratic process when he described the process of making this exhibition/conversation. That sentence sounds quite interesting for me, because more or less there's much freedom here on, wait a minute, okay, on the virtual place, much than the reality, which is totally connected to power relations. My question is to you all, what are these ways/methods of resistance inside the cultural production body itself?
علي غريزة صعب. Yeah, if I just go on this like culture in relation to the internet, and also what we call a democratic process somehow, because when I said democratic process, it was a counter to the idea of the creator in the Kunstgesamtwerk. Yeah, Ali that is a concept from this guy Richard Wagner. So the one that Hitler loved him, although that they said that he's innocent, he's not. He wrote a paper about future for our future of art, and he was talking about dictatorship of the creator. that you have to be dictators. So this was contrary to that. And this is actually reflecting the idea of the power relation, how we see things. I think the democratic part of this conversation that we took and discussions, it wasn't because of the internet. I think it because of the low esteem of the power somehow. And I felt it from the second day. Somehow I just felt comfortable to get, and I think he is actually answering a different, about the use of whatever is it, human productions based on understanding a very complex conscious. For Sudan, they say, something. They say all the time this. Look at the full part of the glass. In Sudan, glass cause al-moja, which cause actually is the same nickname of the former regime people, NCB. So if somebody tell you, look at the full part of the glass, you basically that you have to look at the good inside the bad, essentially. And that was actually, I'm looking at it, that why we thought about the internet, because in this way, because I think all the people that are sharing this screens, it's kind of a complex to get in that beneficial interest of the Silicon Valley. So all the time we look at it in this complex and interesting way. And that was actually, I come again to the keyboard, and this actually, I kind of touch it a little bit in the concept of my work that I used in the type of describing the art. I used the terminal typeface that it's used in the terminal, and I also used kind of the language from the terminal as a reminder of actually, as much as the terminal is the essential thing that you use to communicate to the machine in front of your computer. And it's kind of all the time hinting me that as much I want to learn that language, it's called Linux, because this is how I grab the resistance in the power emerging in the future. So I don't know if this is answering, but I like that the question is not answerable for me. But it's kind of opening way of talking about it.
Yeah. Maybe I have just one comment to add on this. أولاً, I remembered, I looked up the name of the book, the writer of the book, Sue Thomas. ثانياً, I think the question of resistance is very interesting, and I think that providing a solution is part of thinking of life through the lens of computers, and it's like a computational thinking. And I think that this brings to mind 3 questions that were raised by someone in a lecture that I was listening to, James Bridle, is thinking, when we approach the question of resistance, maybe asking or trying to reflect on on 3 questions could be helpful. اللي هو أولاً, who owns or operates and directs the technology that we use today, and who understands and can use and can shape the technology, and who is who. So I think these questions are, somehow can provide ways to think about it, but without necessarily providing solutions, because we don't want solutions.
Actually, we need to end in a bit, so I'm going to answer Dakhil's question very briefly. Dakhil asked if there are plans to continue the project despite the end of the residency. Actually, بواحد الشهر رح يبلش the second iteration, so this project will be ongoing for at least another 2 months.
Actually, we have and Bayan with us here.
Some of the future residents are here with us today. فأهلا وسهلا فيكم. The second question I'll ask is for Tamara, actually. Maybe you can answer it briefly, and then we will conclude with a reading of an excerpt from كتب يزن أشقر للمنشور الأول لإنترنت الأشياء. Tamara, the question is, you said something about loneliness and missing talking to intelligent people. How would you deal with that problem, not only during COVID-19, but in general?
Yeah, it's a great question. I cannot resolve anyone's loneliness, but I can tell you this. There is a fundamental difference between solitude and loneliness. And loneliness is solitude with a problem. And so in order for one to be alone without a problem. There needs to be a dignified relationship with one's loneliness. And so while I am prone to, I'm a passionate observer, I am prone to being imprisoned by my desires and by my affections, but dignified loneliness calls for us not to be, imprisoned by the affections of others in a way that would fundamentally disturb that necessary solitude. So I think that there must be a disciplined detection between the different lonelinesses we're trying to resolve. And I don't think one should ever try to resolve the fundamental loneliness of existence, as trite as that sounds, but only the loneliness of writing to someone. And I think that, and be written to back. So it's, there are many intelligent people in the world that are very interesting to be spoken to. When I was younger, I thought that there weren't that many interesting people, and now I think way too many people are interesting. So I think there has to be a dignity, a fundamental dignity to one's loneliness. And I think to allow someone to puncture your solitude is a great responsibility. And the only advice I really have, not to form this in the in the way of advice, I hate that, but is to take responsibility for your solitude.
Okay.
There's a question in the chat, very funny, to sum up with it. The question was, when you close the exhibition every day, when the time the exhibition closed? And this was bad.
Close your laptop.
Yeah.
Okay, بس بدي أذكر إنه our next iteration would start on the 1st of June. وإذا حابين تعرفوا أي شيء عن our activities or our upcoming workshops and events, you can follow دائرة الفنون accounts and also the Internet of Things accounts. وبحب أختم بهيك مقتطف من ملاحظات من حالة طوارئ ليزن أشقر. يبدو العالم أكثر قتامة الآن، بقدر ما أحاول تخيله مضيئاً، بقدر ما هو مظلم في الواقع، يزداد تعقيداً يوماً بعد يوم، ومحاولة فهمه شاقة. أرى العالم ولا أرى سوى نكبات متزايدة، كوارث مناخية وعنصرية وقمع متزايد، وتسليع مفرط لكل شيء، وتوارثات فاشلة، والآن جائحة. يفضح التفكير في هذه المشاكل عن حدودي، لكنني لا أتوقف أبداً. أتنازل عن محاولة فهم كل شيء. لقد تجاوزت القدرة على ذلك ببضعة قرون. أغرق في المحتوى. البيانات تخنقني. أنا محاط بمنقذين زائفين يتنافسون على انتباهي. ما تبدو أنها يد عون هي في الواقع إعاقة. أنقذ من مستنقع لأرمى في آخر. حاولت تشكيل العالم لغرضي الخاص. أنا إنسان، المخلوق المختار. أحكم وأسود. كل شيء كان لمصلحتي. قهرت الأرض وحكمت الطبيعة. لقد كان الأمر كذلك دائماً، ولكن ليس بعد الآن. لحظتي المعاصرة يميزها القلق والقنوط. لست أنا فحسب. قم فقط بتصفح تويتر. نظرة صغيرة سريعة هي بمثابة قراءة سجل عقلي. الجميع مكتئب وقلق ومحبط. لم يبدأ هذا مع الوباء، بل أدى الوباء إلى تفاقمه. كل شيء يبدو غريباً. تنويعات طفيفة على نوتة ثابتة. غسق فلكي عالق. لا أعرف ماذا أتوقع، وأجد العزاء أحياناً في عدم توقع أي شيء بعد الآن. هو الخوف الإنساني الأبدي من اللامرئي والمجهول. الأصعب أن تهزم عدواً غير مرئي، والآن لي أكثر من عدو. Well, thank you all for joining us today. وشكرا للريزيدنتس.
شكرا.
يا زن
أشتاقكم.
شكرا يزن.
شكرا يزن.
I do want to make a small indulgent announcement that on Saturday will be the last workshop that I'm going to host. If you want to be part of it, I encourage you. It's my workshops have. This is the third workshop I've been hosting it bi-weekly. We're going to be watching a film. Michael Haneke's the piano teacher, and we're going to be talking about desire. So about desire, about Me Too, about cancel culture, about taking responsibilities for our desires, about power, about sex. So please, if you'd like to be part of it, just insert your email in the chat and I will email you with the film and the other details. It's going to be on Saturday at 9.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you for everybody who was present here with us today. Thank you for the artists. I hope إنه الconversations هاي رح تكمل في طريقة أو أخرى وتصبحوا على خير كلياتكم.
باي.
باي.